Today we've got a crazy story where somebody maliciously complied and took another person to court. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, scheduled breaks must be taken on schedule. My work has very little interaction with others for the most part. Basically, you come in, do your work, and go home, except for a meeting or two during the day. Pretty straightforward. New manager comes in and wants everyone's schedule so she can keep track of the comings and goings. Your breaks and lunch need to be scheduled the same every single day and be taken on time, according to her memo. My morning break is at the end of the team's 15-minute huddle. A few days later, the huddle's running long, so I got up and left the room after 15 minutes. She must have thought I was using the restroom, but I was sitting in the break room, which she noticed when she walked through at the end of the huddle. Every single time the huddle ran long, I would leave after 15 minutes. She finally asked about it, and I replied that my break was scheduled and needed to be taken on time. She said that means within reason and to not walk out of meetings. I asked if she was going to amend her memo. She didn't amend her memo. I didn't change my routine. This continued like a peeing contest for the 6 months she ran the department until she transferred. Next manager turned huddles into a team meeting bullet points for the day, and we all went back to normal. I mean, I guess there's nothing really wrong with the way she wanted to try to run it, but you kind of have to have in the memo, take the breaks on time when and if possible. Like, imagine if it wasn't a team huddle and OP was actually responsible for like some very critical part of the workflow, and suddenly it's 9:15, gotta take that morning break. I mean, is there any actual reason why what the manager wanted to achieve couldn't have worked with a little bit more flexibility? 10-year security guard commented, "I can't tell you how many times a boss asked me why I do something, and my answer is, 4 years ago, you sent an email telling us to do it this way." Well played, good person. Smelly Caw commented, "In IT, I have a favorite variant on that one. You did it wrong. Why on earth did you do it that way?" I reply, "Why on earth did you approve the change request where I said I was going to do it that way?" Change requests are formal documents that describe exactly what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, and why you're going to do it, and how you'll back out if it goes pear-shaped. There are multiple layers of approval from both technical experts and management. You also occasionally get something like, "That was a 10-minute outage. That is unacceptable." Then why did you approve the change where I said the outage would be up to an hour? Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of malicious compliance, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? Our next story is As You Want. This is not my personal story, but one from my dad years ago. I don't remember all the details as it's been years since I last heard the story, so bear with me. He worked in a company where they had to unload trucks with a forklift. To draw you a picture, there was a delivery bay with a big offloading space, and next to it was a small creek. The manager was a person who was always stressed and was never able to give you a proper answer on where he wanted certain stuff to be unloaded. So one day, it was a busy day again. My dad asked him where he wanted this pallet to be offloaded. So the manager, busy as always, said, "Just throw it down the creek." That's exactly what my dad did. When he told me the story the first time, he couldn't stop laughing. Never again did he get such an answer out of that manager. I mean, at least OP's dad could also, just feign ignorance. I don't know, boss. You said throw it in the creek." Coder Joe 1 commented, "I find this story palatable." Ashardis commented, "Clearly, this story holds water." Our next story is, "You want to fix our working hours? Our contracts have something to say about that." Early last year, we had a new manager take over the department. He previously headed another IT department in Germany, but moved to Switzerland to take the role in ours. Our team is spread over Switzerland, Spain, and Mexico, with second line in Spain and Mexico, and third line in Switzerland and Spain. It was a few months before he started making changes, and they were mostly small. We had to record how much time we spent on tickets, provide weekly updates on our changes and projects, and our monthly department meeting became fortnightly. It meant a bit more bureaucracy here and there, but it was mostly fine. Nothing excessive. But about 6 months in, he made a change that none of us really liked. While Switzerland and Spain are both in the same time zone, in reality, our times don't really line up. Employees in Switzerland will start at any time between 7 and 8:30, while Spain can start later than 9 o'clock. Lunch in Switzerland is often from 11:30 to 12:30, while Spain will wait until 13 or later. Home time in Switzerland ranges from 15:30 to 17:30, while the team in Spain will often be online until 18. This means that meetings between the third-line teams usually take place between 9 to 11:30 and 14 to 16, i.e. about 4.5 hours a day. Outside of those times, you risk people not having started yet, having already gone home, or being out for lunch. This is what our new manager didn't like. While he couldn't really do much about lunch times, he saw the opportunity to align our start and end times. After reviewing people's calendars, he determined that enforcing an 8 o'clock to 17 working day would cause the least amount of disruption to our schedules. This would increase the number of hours where we're all available by 2 per day, or 10 per week. When he told us about the change, none of us were happy. Even those that wouldn't be impacted because it already aligned with their usual start and finish times were annoyed on behalf of those who would be impacted. When we asked why the change was being made, we were simply told it was about us all being online together more. Some people complained that it would impact out-of-work commitments, and we were told he would make allowances, but only temporarily. One guy said that he only takes a 30-minute lunch break, so this would mean he goes over his weekly hours. The manager said he would look into that, and then an older member of the team asked if he had run it by HR. The manager said no, this isn't something he needs to run by HR. The same guy then asked if we would have to start recording our hours. The manager said no, this has nothing to do with recording hours. Turns out the manager made a mistake here. You see, in Switzerland, by law, employees need to record their working hours, and employers need to retain records to ensure compliance with labor laws. There are, however, a few exceptions. Smaller companies can simply record the number of hours worked each day. Meanwhile, senior employees can be exempted from logging their hours if they meet a certain salary threshold, and their role allows for autonomy in the hours worked. All of the engineers on the team based in Switzerland had signed this waiver. It wasn't uncommon for us to work 11 hours on one day and then 5 hours on the next. It wasn't uncommon for us to work 30 hours in one week and then 50 hours the next. We never recorded these hours. We never explicitly told our team leaders or manager. It was simply understood that some days or weeks would be busy, and as we managed our own time, we would make up for it later. We were trusted to manage our own time, and if we didn't sign the waiver to exclude us from logging our hours, it would create a mess for overtime, time off in lieu, etc. But one of the conditions for signing this waiver was that we were free to determine the majority of our working hours, which courts had clarified was defined as 50%. If we are contracted to work 40 hours a week, then our employer can fix 20 of those hours, and we can choose when to take the other 20. The manager had now fixed 100% of our hours. We were no longer eligible for the exception granted to us. For us, we could continue working the dictated hours, and legally we would be fine. But if someone reported our employer to the government, the company could be fined and potentially be forced to log all employees' working hours or lose the ability to file working time waivers. i.e., engineers couldn't work out of hours to perform maintenance and updates. The impact to the company could be huge. So the guy that asked the question went straight to HR and informed them of the manager's new policy. HR, recognizing the legal risk that such a policy could create for the company, went straight to the manager's director. The policy was put on hold later that day. On the Friday of the same week, another meeting was held. The manager apologized for not familiarizing himself with Swiss labor laws before implementing the policy, and instead decided to implement a new one which would be legally compliant. Spain would continue with the 8 o'clock to 17 working hours. For Switzerland, 50% of our working hours would be fixed, 8 to 10 and 15 to 17. In short, the first and last 2 hours of the day were fixed, and we would have to fill in the rest with our free hours. It was dubious at best. I look at my calendar for Monday and see I have a meeting at 11 o'clock and another one at 15, so I quickly ping a message to the two people on the 11 o'clock meeting, and then Monday comes around. At 6 o'clock, I log in and see the two other members of the team I'd spoken to on Friday are logged in from home. I drop them a message to say hi. Our plans are to work until 10 and then log off until 11 when we have a meeting together with some of the team in Spain, take lunch from 11:30 to 13:30, and then finish at 17. 2 people arrive in the office at 7, having planned to take a 2-hour lunch break in the city. The rest of the team, based in Switzerland, another 4 people, logged in at 8 o'clock and quickly hear what the other half of the team were doing. One was working from home, so wanted to be done as soon as possible, and one had an appointment at 17:30, so had to stick to the manager's implied schedule. But the other 2 that were in the office had free time that evening. At 11:30, they left the office, returning just before 15, having spent the afternoon on a boat sailing around Lake Zurich. At 17, they both left the office and clocked up the rest of their hours working from home. On Tuesday, the fixed hours for the teams in both Switzerland and Spain were scrapped. The manager left the department a few months later. So if anybody understands this better than I am, let me know in the comments, but am I right in saying that according to Swiss law, they only have to show up accounted for those 50% hours? Meaning, considering the ridiculousness of those 2 hours at the start and end of the day, they're going to just basically freak off and go wherever they want during those hours that they're not required to be there? I mean, tell the people that their 4 hours are either at the start or end of the day, and they'll probably adjust around that and give you plenty of hours in work. But you're going to try to game the system by putting 2 hours at the very start of the entire work shift and at the very end? Yeah, people aren't going to play along with that. Soupy62 commented, "Here in Australia, nicknames are common. I've often heard such people called passion fingers, because once he touches something, it's freaked." Night Otter commented, "I used to sit next to the local HR person, so I would hear snatches of her side of calls. The best one was, 'No, you cannot have X do Y, ... because X is in the Paris office, ... France has different labor laws, that's why.'" Our next story is, "Provide an offer? Don't mind if I do." A few recent stories on here reminded me of a friend of mine, we'll call Dave, shared with his permission. Dave was working for a company for a few years, liked it there, liked the job, liked everything but the pay. His company pretty much only gave raises if you had a competing offer. Dave's boss knew this and advised him as such since he wanted to keep Dave. Dave didn't want to interview anywhere else. However, the supervisor that had hired him, we'll call him Bruce, had moved on to another job. Dave called Bruce, told him the situation, and Bruce was just like, "I've got an idea. I'll send you an offer letter. How much should you be making?" Dave was making $85,000 at the time, and based on his skills, experience, etc., should have been making about $110,000, so that's what he told Bruce. Bruce said not to worry and that he would take care of it. Dave gets an email from Bruce, doesn't look too hard at it, and tells his supervisor the next day that he has an offer and was wondering if his job would counter. Dave forwards the letter from Bruce, and Dave's boss gets back to him offering him $130,000 to stay. As it turns out, Bruce, because he didn't actually need to budget for this position, because it was fake, put $125,000 in the offer letter. He also had a knowledge of Dave's unit's budget, having formerly worked there, and knew they could afford it to keep Dave. And that is how Dave maliciously complied with a fake offer letter to get a raise. Postscript: Bruce moved to a third company about 5 years ago and has since hired Dave there in an executive role he's doing well in. So this is why they said it's always so important to network. If you know people well, especially people that keep moving up the food chain, it turns out if you have those connections, sometimes it might near double your salary. Problem is, I'm socially awkward and terrible at reaching out to people. Any ideas in the comments on how to be better at that? Reaching out more? Taking that initiative and reaching out to people more? Networking? Neat Conversation 530 commented, "How can I get a hold of Bruce?" Welkin79 commented, "First, find a rooftop with a giant spotlight." Our next story is, "Want me to clean up users on the portal? Done. You're deleted." I work in IT for a big company and manage a portal that a small group of people use daily. Manager wanted me to go through the list of users and remove anyone who didn't need access. Simple request, I reduced the list from 100 to 30 people. Everyone's happy. Couple of weeks later, manager's complaining that 30 users is too much and wanted me to create a list of all of their names, what team they're a part of, who they report to, and how often they need access to this portal. Annoying request, but sure, I got it done. He goes through the list and gets mad when he sees names that he doesn't recognize, even though our company has a couple thousand employees. So he tells me to delete all users whose names he doesn't recognize. Stupid request, but okay, done. We're a global company, so immediately overnight I'm getting bombarded with emails that systems are down and no one has access to log into the system and fix it. My phone's going off, but freak it, I don't get paid to work at 3 a.m. Next morning, my manager somehow gets mad at me for deleting the users he told me to delete and tells me to add them back? No crap, Sherlock. Couple weeks later, he again brings up that he's not happy and the system is not secure. Too many users have access, blah blah blah. Like, bro, how bored are you? He wanted me to review the list of users with him again. 27 of the users use the system daily. There are only 3 users, himself and 2 other people, that are high up management that don't use the system at all but are there for political reasons. He starts yelling at me, telling me to delete anyone who doesn't use the portal daily as part of their core job, and anyone new who wants access must fill out a form and explain why they need it. Okay, fine, freak it, done. Couple weeks pass by and he goes, "Hey, I think something's wrong with the system. I can't log in anymore." I say nope, it's working just fine. The manager says, "Then why can't I log in?" I reply, "I removed all users who don't use it daily as part of their core job." Quoted my manager from weeks ago, word for word, and the manager says, "Add me back." I slide him the form he created, and the manager's upset, and I smile. It's been weeks and he still hasn't filled out the form, and I still haven't added him back. We are somehow on good terms now. I mean, I think that form that OP slid back over was just the solid extra hurdle that they would have to pass that made them go, all right, you know what? I didn't actually need access anyways. I just kind of wanted it. Forget it. I mean, I gotta be honest, knowing me, if I'm in that position, I want to be able to access all the stuff that has the funny buttons and back-end stuff that looks all cool. I mean, I just kind of want to see it, you know? Like Marge Simpson. I just think they're neat. Still Dazed Confused commented, "Sounds like he has serious seagull tendencies. Swoop in, screen a lot, crap on everything, and fly away, combined with not having enough to do." Separate Wall 8315 commented, "I didn't know it had a name. Seagull. Of course you're always going to find something in a database to change, but explaining to my Seagull that the country code for Germany really is DE, well, that was my final straw." Our next story is, you want the server down during business hours? You got it. I used to work IT at a mid-sized logistics company. Our warehouse ran 24/7, but the corporate office was open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. I was responsible for maintaining the internal server that handled everything from payroll to inventory management to shipping labels. One Monday morning, I got an email from a higher-up, let's call her Karen, demanding that we take the server offline immediately for scheduled maintenance. Now, I had scheduled that maintenance for Sunday evening, sent out 3 notices, and got no objections. But Karen hadn't read those emails and was now insisting we do it right now during her working hours. I replied, taking the server offline during business hours will temporarily halt access to the shipping system, inventory, time tracking, and payroll processing. Confirm you'd like me to proceed. She replied, and I quote, "Yes, you should be working on my schedule. Get it done now." All right, malicious compliance time. I looped in the warehouse manager and let him know the system would be down per Karen's urgent request. Then I pulled the plug at exactly 10:30 a.m. Within 15 minutes, the office was in chaos. No one could clock in or out, print labels, track shipments, or even check inventory levels. Phones were ringing off the hook. The CFO stormed into my office asking what the heck was going on. I just showed him the email thread. Less than 30 minutes later, Karen came to my office red-faced and yelling. I calmly pointed out that she had approved the server downtime in writing despite warnings. I offered to restore access early but reminded her that it would take time to reboot and check for errors from the forced shutdown. Fallout? Oh yes. She got dragged into a meeting with the COO and CTO that afternoon. From what I heard, it didn't go well for her. After that, all urgent IT requests from management had to go through a change management process with multiple approvals. I also got a nice little bonus on my next paycheck for handling the outage with professionalism. Sometimes the best way to teach someone why we have procedures is to let them break one once. If I had like omnipotent power, I would love to do like a survey and see what the global average would be in this situation, whether or not you would put your foot down or allow that manager to just sink themselves. Because I know there would be a little voice in the back of my head like, do the right thing, don't let this whole operation get sunk. But also I would really want to see what happens when I go through with it. Musical Merlin 1973 commented, yeah, when someone asks you to verify your demand in writing, you should always rethink your decision. When IT asks, are you sure? You should put your ego aside and realize you're about to screw up royally. Blue Krabby DC commented, used this for the first time in my life yesterday. New manager was asking for us to break the rules to make the metrics that determine our team's compensation look better. I asked for it in writing, and she immediately went from headstrong, my way or the highway to, I'll get back to you. Our next story is, do all the work yourself or get 0%. In high school, I was in a science class that I did very well in. I was top of the class and scored nearly 100% on every test and assignment. The teacher assigned a big group project that would take about a week to complete with a team of 4 students. Groups were randomly assigned, and unfortunately, I was paired up with 3 kids who were barely passing the class. In class, we're given time to make plans together as a group to divide up work, examine the instructions, schedule times outside of school to meet up, etc. It was at this point my teammates decided to tell me that they weren't going to do any work on the project. I asked why, and they said they knew I really cared about my grade, so they figured I would do it on my own. They were so lazy, they were banking on the fact that I wouldn't tank my own grade so they could benefit off of my hard work when I inevitably got a good score on the project. I was ticked and said that was unfair. They dug in and said, too bad. Now you either do this project yourself or you'll get a 0%. Cue malicious compliance. Now, I could have gone to the teacher and he probably would have sorted this out, but a better idea struck me. So I said, fine, you win. I'll do what you say. They smiled smugly and thought that was that. But you see, the teacher had a policy that at the end of the semester, your lowest grade, excluding finals, would be taken off of your record. So if you forgot to turn in an assignment or did really bad on one test, you got a mulligan so it wouldn't ruin your final grade. I had never done poorly on an assignment all year, so I never needed my mulligan. However, I knew that these crapheads all did. If they got a big fat 0 on a crucial assignment, they probably would fail the class. So I did exactly as they instructed. I did no work on the project all week, just sat on it and bided my time. At the beginning of the next week, all the students turned in their assignments. My team watched as I sat in my chair, unmoving. Finally, one said, "Hey OP, aren't you going to turn in the project?" I said, "Oh, I didn't do the project." They were shocked and asked why the heck I didn't do it. I said, "You said do all the work or get a 0%. I chose 0%. They were all royally ticked. They all had to do credit recovery over the summer. They hated my guts, but I couldn't have cared less. It was the most satisfying failing grade in my entire life. Yeah, go OP, congratulations on the failing grade. I wish that I could say any of my failing grades throughout my academic career could be specifically my most proudest one. I sure didn't enjoy having to do credit recovery over the summer. Sunfire Alpha 01 commented, "I've done this before even without the mulligan. I just ate the 0. I was written up and sent to the principal. The principal said, 'You'll get a 0. I replied, "That's fine, I'll take a 0. I have straight A's in the class, I don't care." He says, "Go back to class and take your 0 then." I got a 0. The rest of the group also got a 0. They failed the class and had to repeat it because that 0 dropped their already low grades below the cutoff. I got an A in the class anyway because I aced all the tests. Debaser11 commented, "Had this stupid janky online homework thing in physics in college. It only accepted the exact answer, so if you had the slightest thing wrong, it was wrong. I tried with it first semester and had over 100% in the class since all the tests had some extra credit options. Second semester, if I didn't solve it right away, I just put in a number and hit submit. At one point, my professor pulled me aside to say that I clearly wasn't trying hard on it. I asked him if I had an A+ in the class, and he confirmed I did. That ended that conversation. Our next story is, take you to court? Okay. This was many years ago, so I apologize if some of the details are incorrect. 'Twas the year of our Lord 2006. My big sister had just started driving on her own. My parents did as most parents did at the time. They bought her the biggest pile of crap car that they could find. Relatively reliable, but it was a mid-80s gold Geo Metro. It was a beater, rusty, dented and dinged, very ugly, and importantly for this story, one of the mirrors was duct taped on. One afternoon, in the fading light, she was driving to her local Pizza Hut to pick up her paycheck. On that fateful day, as the sun was going down, someone in a big black Suburban type of vehicle backed into her front driver's side pretty hard. So hard, in fact, that the car was completely totaled, but luckily my sister was fine. Both parties had insurance, they called the police to take an official report, and my parents started the hunt for a new car. Some time passes, and they get a letter from the Suburban's insurance agency asking for our insurance to cover the cost of the damage done to the Suburban. The Suburban driver was alleging that my sister had been speeding through the parking lot and was therefore at fault. This was news to them. They grilled my sister, who swore up, down, and sideways that she was not speeding, and actually that she was going much slower than normal because as the sun was setting, it was hitting the windshield in such a way that made visibility difficult. After some digging, they found in the police report the sheriff's deputy had noted that the mirror that was duct taped on fell straight down. So not only had my sister not been speeding, but she was very nearly or completely stopped at the time of the accident. My parents' insurance sent a letter back stating that my sister had not been at fault for this accident, and they were willing to accept the total that they had paid for the car several months earlier, a paltry sum of $350. The lady who hit my sister responded back that she would not be paying for anything as she was very confident that she was not at fault, and told my parents that they would just have to take her to small claims court. My parents responded, "Bet," and did just that. In order to get all the paperwork in line for small claims court, they had to take this crappy little Geo Metro to an auto body shop and get an estimation for how much it would cost to replace the panels that this lady had totaled. Well, a car that old was difficult to find parts for, and so they were unable to find anything to replace the panels and the door. So they gave her a quote for how much it would be to repair those panels, as well as replace the tire and suspension bits that she messed up by backing into it, about $4,000. Just before court, they did attempt to go to mediation with her to attempt to get her to just pay the $350 that they had initially bought the car for. Unfortunately, or fortunately, she was still convinced that she was not at fault. Long story short, my parents were awarded the full $4,000, as it was determined that the lady did not check behind her thoroughly enough before backing out of the parking spot. And that's how my parents made $3,000 on a $300 car. I mean, OP wasn't lying when they said that car is old reliable. That car is so old reliable, it got you 10 times the money back you put into it. Also, needless to say, this is why most people these days should have a dash cam. I mean, considering this took place in 2006, it's not surprising that OP's sister didn't. I mean, if you had one back then, it probably cost just as much as the car did. Also, I just want to believe so badly that the auto shop did like the bare minimum, knowing that this was like a slam dunk. I mean, maybe they even said what they said, hoping that they would go through and pay the $4,000 to them for labor. Says what commented, "My son drove a junker Toyota and we decided to sell it for $1,000. Before we could list it, a drunk driver crashed into it whilst it was parked in front of our house on a residential street. Drunk's insurance paid $2,000 for the totaled car. Win-win." Snuggle Tuggles commented, "Not quite the same, but I had a used 2007 Toyota Tacoma that I got as my first car for $14,000. It got totaled in a wreck and the insurance paid $19,000 for it. Love the truck, but I got paid $5,000 to drive it for 7 years. Frankie7 commented, "A guy I worked with had just gotten a new car and was about to list his old car for sale. A storm hit and a tree fell on his old car and he got double from insurance what he was going to ask for." But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy malicious compliance story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That's it, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.